In the middle of a packed Trump rally, with thousands cheering and cameras rolling, something happened that no one expected. Right as Trump was delivering one of his biggest applause lines, he suddenly stopped. His eyes locked on one man in the crowd, a soldier in uniform, crying. What Trump did next wasn't in the script, and it left the entire arena speechless. It was just another high-energy rally, the kind of event Donald Trump had done countless times before. The venue was packed wall to wall with supporters, some of whom had waited in line for hours just to get a good spot near the stage. The air was thick with excitement and anticipation. Red hats dotted the crowd like little flashes of color, and everywhere you looked, people were waving American flags, holding up handmade signs with slogans like "Keep America Great" and "Trump 2024." Giant speakers blasted the familiar playlist of classic rock anthems that had become a signature part of Trump's rallies. The energy was unmistakable. Trump himself was in top form. Standing at the podium, microphone in hand, he delivered one of his signature speeches with all the flair and bravado his supporters loved. He cracked jokes at the media stationed at the back of the arena. He tossed out one-liners that drew roars of laughter. He made bold promises about the economy, the border, the military, every line carefully designed to fire up the base. The crowd responded on cue, cheering, chanting, clapping, and hanging on his every word. But then something happened, something that even Trump didn't see coming. Just as he was building up to one of his biggest applause lines, right in the middle of a well-rehearsed sentence, his eyes caught something unusual in the crowd. For a moment, his voice wavered. He paused mid-sentence, breaking the rhythm that the audience was used to. At first, people thought he was just pausing for dramatic effect, something he often did to build suspense before delivering a punchline. But this was different. Trump's gaze fixed sharply on a single spot, just a few rows from the stage. His face shifted. The smile faded. The playful tone disappeared. There was a noticeable change in his expression, something serious, something concerned. There, standing alone among a sea of supporters, was a man in full military uniform. The uniform was neat and pressed, complete with service ribbons across the chest. His boots were polished, his cap tucked respectfully under his arm. Everything about his appearance said pride, discipline, and honor. Except for one thing, the man was crying. Not just a quiet tear running down the cheek. This wasn't the kind of discreet, hidden emotion you might expect from someone trying to hold it together in public. This was raw, visible, unmistakable. The soldier's shoulders were trembling with each breath. His head was bowed low, and both hands were covering his face as he tried, and failed, to regain his composure. For a few long seconds, Trump just stared. It was as if the noise of the crowd had faded into the background. The cameras, still pointed at the stage, didn't catch on right away. The majority of the audience, caught up in the rally atmosphere, hadn't even noticed what was happening. People continued waving their signs, clapping along, and recording with their phones. But from the stage, Trump saw it clearly. A soldier in tears. Something about the sight stopped him cold. Those who know Trump know he can shift gears quickly when something catches his attention. And this was one of those moments. Without waiting, without checking with his team or even giving a hint of what he was about to do, he raised his hand and pointed directly at the man in uniform. His voice, still amplified by the microphone, broke through the arena with words that caught everyone off guard. "Hey you, soldier, are you okay? What's going on there?" Instantly, the mood shifted. The loud cheers began to die down as people turned to look in the direction Trump was pointing. Heads swiveled. Camera crews scrambled to adjust their focus, zooming in on the soldier. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as the realization set in. Something real, something emotional, was unfolding right there, live and unfiltered. Security staff, caught by surprise, started moving toward the area, unsure if there was a problem or if their intervention was needed. But Trump didn't wait for them. In a move that broke every bit of rally protocol, he stepped down from behind the podium. Microphone still in hand, he started walking toward the soldier. For those in attendance, the tension was immediate and electric. Was this a safety concern? Was the soldier in distress for some unknown reason? Was something wrong? Or was this about to become one of those rare moments where everything else fades away Politics, speeches, cameras, and what's left is just one human being recognizing the pain of another. The entire arena seemed to hold its breath as Trump closed the distance, walking straight toward the crying man in uniform, ready to find out exactly what was going on. Trump, known for going off script whenever something grabs his attention, didn't hesitate for long. It wasn't in his nature to ignore something that felt this important. In the middle of his prepared remarks, just as the crowd was building momentum with cheers and applause, he suddenly froze. His eyes stayed locked on the soldier standing in the crowd. Without breaking eye contact, Trump lifted his hand, pointed directly at the man, and spoke into the microphone with a tone that was both commanding and concerned. "Hey you, soldier, are you okay? What's going on there?" The sound of his voice, now carrying a serious edge, cut through the roar of the crowd like a knife. Instantly, the energy in the room shifted. Thousands of heads twisted in unison to look in the same direction Trump was pointing. People stopped mid-cheer, mid-clap, mid-chant. The buzz of excitement turned into a wave of curiosity and confusion. Who was this man? Why had Trump suddenly stopped everything to call him out? Security teams stationed near the stage immediately tensed up. Their job was to expect the unexpected, and this certainly qualified. Some members of the Secret Service began scanning the crowd for any unusual movements. Was this man a threat? Was something wrong? Could this be an incident about to unfold? Within seconds, plainclothed agents and arena staff were already moving toward the area, communicating quickly through their earpieces. Meanwhile, the camera crews, positioned to capture every angle of Trump's speech, scrambled to adjust. Camera operators rushed to zoom in on the soldier. Reporters and photographers fumbled with their equipment, trying to capture the developing scene. The media booths at the back of the venue lit up with activity as producers barked orders into headsets. "Get a shot of the soldier. Focus in. We've got something happening live." But Trump didn't wait for anyone. He didn't wait for a briefing from his team, didn't glance at his security detail for approval. With no hesitation at all, he stepped away from the podium, microphone still in hand. He started walking straight off the stage and directly toward the soldier. The arena fell into an almost eerie silence as people realized what was happening. This wasn't part of the rally script. There were no applause lines here, no campaign slogans, no teleprompters guiding what was about to unfold next. Thousands of people watched as Trump descended the steps of the stage, moving steadily toward the man in uniform, weaving through staff, photographers, and startled event organizers. You could feel the tension rise with every step he took. Spectators in the front rows leaned forward, craning their necks to get a better view. Conversations turned into whispers. People began pulling out their phones, switching from taking selfies to capturing video of what was quickly turning into a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Some wondered if there was a medical emergency. Others thought maybe this was some kind of protest or unexpected outburst. In times like these, you never really know. Anything could happen in a crowd that size, with so many emotions running high. But Trump didn't look worried. His pace was steady. His focus was absolute. He wasn't moving like someone concerned for his own safety. He was moving like someone who saw a person in pain and felt pulled toward him. By now, even the people far back in the arena, those who couldn't see exactly what was happening, were aware that something was different. The big screen monitors on both sides of the stage switched over from showing Trump at the podium to a live shot of him walking through the crowd toward the soldier. The camera zoomed in tight on the man in uniform, capturing every painful detail of his emotional struggle. The soldier's shoulders were still trembling. His face was buried in his hands. Some nearby audience members started reaching out to him, patting him on the back, whispering words of encouragement. But the man barely seemed aware of his surroundings. His entire body language screamed heartbreak, exhaustion, and overwhelming emotion. And now, with every step closer, Trump was bringing the entire nation's attention to this single moment. People watching live streams on their phones started flooding social media with comments like, "What's happening at the Trump rally? And why did Trump stop his speech?" News outlets monitoring the rally for sound bites immediately shifted focus to this breaking scene. Speculation rippled through the crowd. Was the soldier reacting to something Trump said? Was this a personal story? A political statement? Or was it something much more personal and emotional than anyone expected? The air inside the arena felt heavier by the second. Time seemed to slow down. In a room that moments earlier had been filled with noise and celebration, there was now an almost sacred hush. Thousands of people stood still, watching, waiting, wondering. And somewhere in the middle of it all, with cameras rolling, security on high alert, and millions about to witness it on social media, Trump kept walking, closer and closer to the soldier, about to find out the truth behind the tears that had stopped an entire rally in its tracks. Trump reached the soldier, who was still visibly struggling to control his emotions. The man kept his head down, shoulders hunched forward, wiping at his eyes with shaky, trembling hands. His chest rose and fell rapidly, as if he were trying to catch his breath, but couldn't. The emotional weight on his face was unmistakable. People standing nearby could see the pain in his expression, the raw grief pouring out of him in front of thousands of strangers. This wasn't a small display of emotion. This was the kind of breakdown that only comes when someone's been holding it in for far too long. Without hesitation, Trump stepped right up to him, ignoring the cameras, the Secret Service agents trailing just steps behind, and the stunned eyes of the entire crowd. He placed one hand firmly, but gently on the soldier's shoulder. The gesture wasn't political, it wasn't staged, and it wasn't something for the cameras. It was instinctual, genuine. For a brief second, the noise of the rally seemed to disappear. The chants, the cheers, the music, all of it faded as Trump leaned in closer. In a much softer, almost fatherly tone, Trump spoke directly to him. The microphone didn't fully catch the volume of his voice, but those standing nearby heard it clearly. "Son, what's going on? Why are you crying?" The soldier kept his head down at first. His lips trembled as he tried to form words, but none came out right away. He swallowed hard, took a deep, shaky breath, and wiped at his eyes again, as if trying to gather the strength to speak. The entire arena seemed to hold its breath with him. People waited, watching with a mix of concern and compassion. Even those who had been loudly cheering minutes earlier now stood silently, their expressions softening as they watched the emotional scene unfold. Finally, after several long seconds that felt like minutes, the soldier's voice broke through the quiet. It was unsteady, cracked with emotion, but filled with sincerity. "Sir, I just came back from deployment," he began, his voice trembling with every word. "I've lost 2 of my closest brothers in combat. I never thought I'd make it back home myself. And now, standing here today, seeing you in person, it just hit me all at once." As the words left his mouth, the silence inside the arena deepened even further. For a few heart-stopping seconds, no one spoke, no one shouted, no one clapped. There was just stillness. Even the distant noise from the outer parts of the venue seemed to pause in respect for the weight of what had just been said. People in the front rows, many of whom had been smiling and chanting moments earlier, could now be seen wiping away tears of their own. Grown men stood with hats held over their hearts. Women put their hands over their mouths, visibly moved. Even members of the press corps, reporters who had been focused on getting their next headline, lowered their cameras, some pausing with tears glistening in their eyes. Cameramen zoomed in carefully, capturing close-ups of the soldier's tear-streaked face. Trump didn't speak right away. He stood there for a few seconds, nodding slowly, visibly absorbing the emotion of the moment. The look on his face changed. The usual bravado, the confident smile, the politician's energy, it all faded. What replaced it was something different, something human. He looked at the soldier like a father would look at a hurting son. There was no calculation, no campaign thinking, just raw, unscripted empathy. And then, Trump did something that no one could have expected. Without saying another word, he opened his arms wide and pulled the soldier in for a hug. Not a brief, one-arm pat on the back kind of hug. Not a quick, photo-op squeeze. This was a real, tight, two-handed hug. The kind that said, "You're not alone. I hear you. I see your pain." The crowd erupted. In an instant, the silence broke into an explosion of sound. Applause, whistles, and cheers rang out from every corner of the arena. The chant started slowly at first, then built momentum until it was booming so loud it echoed off the walls. "USA! USA! USA!" The energy swept through the venue like a wave. Strangers in the crowd hugged each other. Veterans in attendance stood at attention. Flags were raised high. For that brief, powerful moment, every single person there, no matter their political views, felt united by something bigger than politics. As Trump held the soldier, people captured the moment on their phones, already uploading it to social media. Within minutes, the clip was being shared online with captions like "real leadership" and "a moment that transcends politics." Reporters who usually spent their time criticizing Trump found themselves without words. When Trump finally pulled back from the hug, he kept his hand on the soldier's shoulder for a second longer, gave him a steady look, and said something personal, too soft for the microphones to catch. The soldier nodded through his tears, visibly grateful. As Trump turned and made his way back to the stage, the roar of the crowd followed him every step of the way. That rally, meant to be just another campaign stop, had suddenly become the setting for a moment of genuine human connection, one that people there would remember for the rest of their lives. When Trump finally returned to the stage, the mood inside the arena had completely shifted. Just minutes earlier, the atmosphere had been full of campaign energy, loud chants, political slogans, roaring cheers, and playful jabs at the media. But now, there was something else in the air. Something heavier. Something more meaningful. People were still on their feet, still cheering. But this time it wasn't just about politics. It was about something deeper. About shared humanity. About respect. About sacrifice. Trump walked slowly back to the podium, pausing briefly to glance back at the soldier still standing in the crowd. The young man was surrounded now by supporters offering handshakes and pats on the back. Some wiped away their own tears. Others simply stood nearby in silent support. The camera stayed trained on him, showing his face on the big screens hanging from the rafters, his tear-streaked cheeks and trembling hands now visible to everyone in the arena. As Trump adjusted the microphone, the crowd quieted almost instinctively, eager to hear what he would say next. Gone was the sharp-tongued, fast-talking, campaign mode Trump who had been dominating the stage earlier. There was no more talk about poll numbers, opponents, or media ratings. This was a different Trump now. One speaking not from a script, but from the heart. He cleared his throat, took a steadying breath, and then began. "You know, folks, moments like this is what it's really about," he said, his voice softer, but still strong enough to carry through the entire arena. "Not politics, not polls, not media spin. It's about the brave men and women who wear the uniform and sacrifice everything for us, for this country." The crowd erupted again, this time with a mix of applause and emotional cheers. Some shouted, "God bless our troops," while others simply stood with their hands over their hearts. Trump pointed back toward the soldier, still standing near the front rows, and continued, "That young man right there, he's been through more than most of us will ever understand," Trump said, his voice growing firmer with each word. "And yet he stands here today, proud, still believing in this country, still standing tall despite the losses he's endured." The applause grew louder. Some in the crowd began chanting again. This time it wasn't just the usual rally chants. This time it was chants of "thank you," directed at the soldier. Others began shouting "we love you" toward him. Trump paused for a few seconds, letting the emotion settle. He looked out over the crowd, then back at the soldier. For a moment, it almost seemed like Trump was fighting back some emotion of his own. He took a short breath, steadied himself, and added something that struck a chord with everyone listening. "We have to do better for our soldiers, for our veterans," Trump said, raising his voice just enough to emphasize the point. "Too many come home feeling forgotten, feeling alone, feeling like their sacrifices didn't matter. That's going to change. It has to change." A loud cheer broke out again. People clapped, whistled, and waved flags. Veterans in the audience stood taller, many wiping away tears of their own. Trump continued, "These men and women go off to fight for us. They leave their families behind, they risk everything. And when they come home, they deserve more than just a handshake and a thank you speech," he said, motioning toward the soldier again. "They deserve care. They deserve support. They deserve to know that this country stands behind them every single day." At this point, the entire arena was on its feet again. Even people in the media sections, typically more reserved, stood quietly, recording the speech with a level of focus rarely seen at political events. Social media feeds were already lighting up with clips from the encounter. Hashtags like #SupportOurTroops and #TrumpHug were trending within minutes. Trump wrapped up this emotional part of the rally with one final, powerful statement. So tonight, before we go any further, I want us all to take a moment to think about the people who wear the uniform, the ones still serving, the ones we've lost, and the ones, like this brave soldier here, who carry the scars of war but still stand proud. With that, he stepped back from the microphone for a moment of silence. Thousands in the arena bowed their heads. The quiet was deafening. No music, no chants, just pure, unified respect. And just like that, what started as a routine campaign rally had turned into something much more. An emotional tribute, a moment of unity, a reminder that sometimes, even in the middle of politics, real human moments break through. Moments people would remember long after the campaign signs came down. By the time the rally ended and people started filing out of the arena, the internet had already exploded. Within minutes, clips of the emotional moment between Trump and the soldier began circulating across all major social media platforms. On Twitter, the hashtag #TrumpandTheSoldier started trending nationally. Users flooded the platform with short videos, still images, and emotional reactions. Some people who weren't even supporters of Trump felt compelled to comment. Posts read, "Say what you want about Trump, but this was real. And this wasn't politics, this was human." On Facebook, the video was shared at a staggering rate. People who didn't usually engage in political content posted the clip along with personal messages about family members who had served in the military. Comment sections were full of people tagging friends and loved ones. "Watch this. This gave me chills. And I wasn't there, but I wish I had been." Veterans groups began sharing it too, with captions like, "Leadership isn't always in the script. Sometimes it's in the moments you don't plan for." Even on platforms like Instagram and TikTok, where politics isn't always front and center, the footage of Trump hugging the soldier made its way onto trending pages. Short clips, reaction videos, and emotional replays filled people's feeds. Users stitched together their own content, some adding patriotic music, others giving personal commentary about what the moment meant to them. But it wasn't just social media that took notice. News networks, both the ones that typically supported Trump and those that were often critical, couldn't ignore what had happened. The major cable networks ran the clip on loop during their evening broadcasts. Even anchors known for tough Trump coverage introduced a segment with softened tones. Regardless of political views, one reporter said on air, "This was a moment that struck a chord with people across the country." The clip showed Trump walking down from the stage, placing his hand on the soldier's shoulder, speaking to him quietly, and then delivering that unscripted, heartfelt hug. For many viewers, the footage said more than any prepared speech could. In the days following the rally, the soldier himself became somewhat of an unexpected public figure. Reporters began reaching out to him for interviews. While he was initially hesitant, still emotionally processing the experience, he eventually agreed to a brief conversation with a local news station. Sitting outside his home in his dress uniform, the soldier recounted the moment with visible emotion still in his voice. "I never expected any of this," he said, his eyes glancing down at his hands as he spoke. "I was just overwhelmed that night. I had been holding a lot in for a long time. Losing two of my closest friends, coming home alive when they didn't, it's hard to explain. And standing there, seeing the president, being in that crowd, it all just hit me at once." He paused for a second, took a breath, and continued. "But the fact that the president stopped, that he noticed me, and that he cared enough to come over, speak to me, and then hug me, that meant more than I can explain." The interview clip was posted online and quickly spread across news outlets and social media. People who had already seen the rally footage now felt even more connected to the story after hearing the soldier's personal words. For several days afterward, the viral moment stayed in the headlines. Commentators on both sides of the political spectrum weighed in. Some called it a powerful example of leadership. Others described it as a reminder that, at the end of the day, beneath all the politics, debates, and division, there are moments that remind us we're all human. Veterans organizations used the opportunity to highlight issues facing returning service members. Advocacy groups for mental health and PTSD awareness praised the visibility the moment gave to the emotional struggles many soldiers face after coming home. Fundraising campaigns for veteran support services even saw spikes in donations during that week. Memes, tribute videos, and edited montages continued to circulate online. Some people took old speech clips and overlaid them with footage from the rally. Patriotic music played in the background of fan-made videos with captions like "Real Leadership," "True Patriotism," and a hug that spoke volumes. And perhaps the most lasting impact was on the people who were actually there that day. Attendees who had witnessed the moment firsthand told their own versions of a story, at family gatherings, at local events, and on their own social media pages. Many said it was the most emotional political rally they had ever attended. One person tweeted days later, "We all came for a rally, but we left with something we'll never forget." Even months after, whenever people talked about that event, they didn't just remember the speeches or the campaign slogans. They remembered the moment when Trump spotted a man in uniform crying, and what he said and did wasn't in the script. And that's the story of a powerful, unscripted moment that touched millions. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss more real stories like this. Thanks for watching.